So yesterday we ended up looking at the view criteria, and we figured out that it was not working. So the reason is, while creating the database connection, we did a small mistake. So yesterday, if you remember, we were creating a database connection, and we have created database connection, and the database connection has a properties. So let me show. Let us say if I want to create a database connection, I know where to create. Go to connection. So typically we have to give yeah. So typically we can give the connection name, and we have created connection like this yesterday, right? So you can see, give some tests too, and I can give my username, password. And okay, let me not show you, do like this. Let me show you like this. So what I will do, if I go ahead and create a new application, as I do. So if I go ahead and create new application, and I can go ahead and create the application name. So let me give some test connection, something like that. And I'm not giving anything. So I'm giving a model project, and I'm going to give you a controller project, and then I'm finishing it up. So let us say I got the project. Once I got the project, then my project will get created here. Once my project get created, typically what we need to do, we will start with creating an entity object or view object, right? So if I go ahead and create an entity view object example, it will ask to create the connection, right? So while creating the connection, it will ask for what SQL platform you are trying to create to. Okay, so if I go ahead and create a connection, I can go ahead and create a connection. While creating connection, after creating connection, example, here I'm going to create a connection. Okay, I have, it's my connection details. So everyone has their own connection details. Test connection, it is success, click OK. And after that, you are choosing the platform here. So here platform typically based on the project that you are planning to create. Basically, if you work with the Fusion applications or Oracle applications, we go with the SQL platform. Or if you create any Microsoft specific, Microsoft specific tool, specific project where you use SQL Server, or your application using SQL Server as a database, or DB2 or OLite, you will choose the respective database. Okay, so here is a mistake happened in our old SQL project. I will show you what a mistake happened. After the platform, what data types you are trying to use in your project, in your application. Okay, we have a couple of data types: Oracle data types, Java data types. Java extended for Oracle. It means it is a combination of both Java and Oracle data types. That's the meaning of it. So basically, most of our Fusion application projects, will choose Java extended for Oracle. It means both Java data types and Oracle data types will be supported in our application. That's the meaning of it. So this is how we need to create the project, basically. Okay, this is how we need to create the project. And then we got to create a view object, or let us say, I'll give some random, I'll give some custom query view object, and I will give my query. So I will get my, okay. So before doing that, let me give a proper naming as well. So let me give model.vivo, and it is my country Vivo, and let's keep it. And here The binding should be Oracle named, Oracle positional, JDBC positional. So this binding, if you go with the Oracle platform, typically you will see these three types. If you go with some SQL Server platform or SQL 92, something like that, you will be seeing only JDBC positional. That's exactly what mistake happened in our in yesterday's scenario. Okay, I will show you that. Just remember the binding case here. Okay, typically we choose Oracle named or Oracle positional. I was telling you yesterday what is named and what is positional. Okay, go and create new. I'm not creating any bind variables, and what happened? So here it is. I'm not creating bind variables. What happened to the attributes? Okay, so let me get it again. Okay, so something happened. So let me do one of that. Okay, take it out. Let me create it again. Let me get it. Okay, let me cancel it, create the data model again. But anyway, our database connection is created. We don't need to create again. So let me create a view object here. And let us say package is model.vivo. And my Vivo name is country Vivo. And it's a customer SQL query. And I'm going to query my table. So my table. And I can now I can see my attributes. I'm going to make it as a primary key, and I'm not generating Java classes for now, but next example I'm going to create Java classes. Create application module. We don't have any application module yet. I'm going to create one. I'm going to give package as AM, and I would create this one as test app module. And I'll go to next and then finish. So now my project got created. Now let's compare this project. We have the model and view controller. We haven't created any view controller yet. In that model package, we have the application module and view object, and in that we have the app module. Okay. So, and there is one more property called model. If you click on the model, it will show what connection we have created. We got test2 connection, username is apps, driver is JDBC driver, and SQL platform is Oracle, Java extend for Oracle. That's what our project is. Let me show you the project what we created yesterday. We have created RB first project there. Yesterday's project. Let's go here. And we have created the package in Oracle rb.oracleapps.peer self-service. Under that, we have created model package. Under that, we have AM, Evo, Vivo, and we have model.jpx. If you open this, here if you see, username, everything is good, but SQL platform we have given as SQL 92 in our yesterday's project. As a platform is given as SQL 92, when we are trying to create any view criteria, there is what actually happening there. Whenever we create any criteria, right? Whenever we create any criteria, so typically we use either named binding variable or position binding variable like this, right? So either named or position should be given, but as we have chosen SQL 92, this named and position are not available. We got something called JDBC positional binding variable. JDBC positional binding variable, there is something different which won't follow this one or like that. Instead, they will follow something like question mark. If someone is well versed with Java basically this is how we will ask for the parameters. So that is what exactly happened in our case, in our yesterday's project, when we are trying to create a view criteria. An example, I think we have created a view criteria yesterday for this view object. So we have the view criteria, and once we have the view criteria, we have given simple CNAME like this. That is the criteria we have given, right? And we were trying to run this. Let me run this. And we are running it. It's yesterday's package, yesterday's project. When I'm running this project, so typically what is happening, it will be opening up the tester window. In the tester window, we were trying to apply the criteria and run the, so ours is read viewer instance. By default, it will show something. So I'm going to apply some criteria. Okay, so I'm going to find, and I'm giving some bind variable, some United. When we say that, oh, so where, okay, so it is giving the data now. Okay, so no, it is not. So it is a criteria, and yesterday when we are trying to pull data, let us say Canada. It is a view instance, right? So let me check which view instance we are. Yeah, it is a view instance. And yesterday, let me make sure what I'm running. So I'm into RB read vivo. So let me run the RB country read vivo. Actually, it is looking at different project, not my project. If it is that, this view instances should be, oh no, it's a view object. Maybe view instances will be here. So we have the read viewer instance, country test viewer object. Yeah, it is matching. So what typically I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to apply some criteria. So if I'm trying to apply some criteria here by choosing here, and it is working. Yeah, actually it was not working. The reason I figured out is it is a difference. It was the platform should be Oracle. We have chosen the SQL 92 and data type map as Java. Because of the reason it was not working yesterday. So maybe what I have done, I have created another project with platform as Oracle and data type as Java extended for Oracle. Maybe it is working now because I created another database instance for same project. I created two database instances now. Probably we are using RB batch 03 yesterday, and probably I have referred test 2 maybe. Yes, referring test 2 maybe, but it was RB batch 03 yesterday. Probably that is the reason. So what I intend to say is whenever you create database connection, make sure the platform is Oracle and data type map is Java extended for Oracle. So that's what I was trying to point out, the reason for the yesterday's failure. Okay. So now we have seen the view criteria and how the view criteria does work. Okay. Now what I will do, I will go one more step ahead, and I will try to, till now what we are doing, we are actually testing out in a tester window, that is a Swing application. We are trying to look how the data is coming up in my how the data is coming up in my tester window, whether my whatever components I have created, those components properly pulling up the data. Whenever trying to add the data, whether is the application allowing me to enter the data without any error. It means the connections are working properly and data is coming up properly, data is going to database properly, so things are moving to and fro properly. Then what all we need to do, once we identify things are moving to and fro properly, then we will get a confidence to build the application. Okay, to confidence to build the application. When I talk about building the application, two things will come into the picture. Number one, how the user interface should look like. Okay, how the user interface should look like. In the screen, what component should be placed at what place, which will locate at what place, and each screen, example, if I go to some screen, if I go and do some functionality, what actions to be taken care. Okay, if I go to the screen, click on search button, what should happen? When you click on search button, typically based on the parameters you are giving here, those parameters should be passed to an SQL query, and SQL query should hit to the database and pull the results and show it up on the screen. Okay, so entering the data here is something, and getting the data at the bottom screen is something. So two things are happening here. It is an application, right? We have the fields, designing fields, user interface, and once you do something in the backend, perform some validations, perform some logics, apply some things, and do something that is called a business logic, right? So we have to be comfortable in writing the business logic first. Then we can talk about how to go with the user interface, right? And every business logic is not straightforward. It's not like just click on search button, do something, or click on some link, just open the pages. It has a lot of inbuilt validations happens in any project. To go with the validations, typically, as I was talking to you yesterday about the architecture here, we should also understand everywhere we can implement our business logic. Okay, so while sending data to the user interface, we can implement some business logic. While sending to the database also, we can implement some business logic. So business logics cannot be done just like how we are doing now. This screen alone is helping us to pull and push the data to and fro database and user interface. That's it we are doing, but has no ability to do any validations here. Example, when I'm trying to enter some country ID, what is happening? Maybe when we are trying to okay, so let me open the project that I have created. So when we are trying to do some logic here, basically what is happening when we are trying to insert, when we are trying to add some record to my in this test application, or when we're trying to delete some data from that application, typically what is happening is deleting actually. So maybe if I wanted to keep some validation, if you're trying to delete, maybe send an alert to someone, or if you're inserting, generate an employee ID based on some sequence, or maybe many validations we have to do at each and every step, right? If that is the if you want to write those validations, then you should have full control of how the architecture works and where, at what location, at what point I have to write my code. Okay, to get that, I am going into programmatic way of pulling the data and pushing the data. While pushing the data, what kind of validations I can write and where I can write those kind of stuff. Okay, so here actually when you click on this one, it means you're going to the next record. Click on this one, go to the next record, right? So it is like that. Maybe if you wanted to pull all the records at one page, does this application allow? It won't allow. It's just a tester. Okay, so similarly, if you wanted to add some record, if you wanted to, when I click on add, I wanted to do some validations. Maybe when I click on add, maybe I have to look at, or when I update, maybe I need to look at that country name is following specific norms, or region ID is following specific constraints. if those constraints are not defined at database level, you want to do those validations while committing the data to the database or sending across the database like that. Okay. So for that, let me start talking about how we can do those things programmatically. Okay, instead of how we are doing from application, how we can make this validations programmatically. So if any of you are aware of Form Builder, or if any of you are aware of Oracle Application Framework, how we are doing in the legacy applications, everywhere we are able to write validations before inserting, before updating, or after inserting, before creating, after creating, or when a form opens freshly, what validations to be done, or when we're closing the form, what validation should be done. So there are many validations can be done at every scenario. Okay, and all those validations basically depends upon where the data is actually. Is data going to the database, or we are getting the data from the database, or we are about to pull the database on the screen, or where, at which step we are in. Based on that, we can implement our validation logics. Okay, for that you have to understand the data flow from front end to back end to front end, and what happens at what scenario. Okay, so let me go ahead and talk about few things about what programs we have available and what programs we can modify to achieve our logic actually. Okay, so and again, coming back to the architecture here. Okay, let us think of a scenario. If you want to commit data to the database, or if you want to fetch data from the database into the user interface, so typically what happens, data will be stored, data will be available in the user interface from data control through view object instance. So view object instance is holding the data. Okay, so it's holding the data. It means if I'm fetching data from view object instance, typically it is referring the entity object, and entity object referring the database table, right? So it is flowing like this. Similarly, if I'm committing data into the database, again I'm referring the view object while pulling the while committing the data to the database. This view object again refers to the entity object on which the table is associated to, and on that table we do the commit transaction actually. Okay, so there is some flow, and every flow has a procedure we can think of, or a method we can think of, or a package where we can implement some validations basically. Okay, so for that, let me show you what classes we have in each component in view object, entity object, and application module. So of these three components, the major components, typically every component will have its own classes and methods, and every method has its own meaning. If you know the meaning of that respective class, then it is very easy for us to do everything programmatically without depending on any front-end components basically. Okay, so when I say programmatically, there are many things you can do programmatically. Programmatically, you can create a text message. Programmatically, you can create a view object. Programmatically, you can create an entity object. Programmatically, you can execute a view object. Programmatically, you can commit the data into the database table. So if you can do everything in a program, then it means you are able to handle everything by yourself through the application code. If you could able to do that, then that is what the expectation is. If you want to create some custom application, if you want to create some custom page, if you want custom page has any requirement, then to achieve those requirements, you should have the ability to write it in the custom code. And especially coming to Fusion application, the development of every page is based on the ADF, and you have to know the knowledge of application development framework to create any custom page. There's no other go. We cannot create any custom page through PL SQL or any other programming language. ADF is the only way for that. And to create any custom page, you should have the ability to understand the ADF framework and especially you should have knowledge on these Java classes and how we can use these Java classes to implement your logic. That's all you need. Okay, right. So in view object, we have three classes actually. First one is country. Let us say you are creating country viewer object, and we have a country EVO entity object, and our application module name is RB application module. Let us say it is the namings of the respective components. In the view object, we have three different classes. That is country vivo definition IMPL. Whenever you have the country vivo object, so typically a class can be created based on the name. One is country vivo definition implementation class. Other one is country vivo implementation class, and other one is country vivo row implementation class. We have these three classes. You can have these three classes created in your view object. So what is a class? Class is nothing but it's like a package in the PL SQL, where in the package we have procedures and functions. Similarly, classes will have methods and variables. Okay, and in that class we have set of methods. Oracle will offer a set of methods, and every method will have its own functionality. Example, if you have a vivo definition implementation class. What is the definition implementation class is if you programmatically want to create a new view object. To create a view object, what we are doing? Typically, as of now, we are going here and creating a new view object. What if you wanted to do the same operation programmatically? Okay, if you want to do the same thing programmatically, then you have to rely on the vivo definition implementation class. Okay, maybe at the runtime while you are executing your program, sometime maybe at that runtime, maybe you wanted to create a brand new view definition, because at that point of time you want to execute some query, and you cannot execute query just like that. To execute a query in a database at runtime, you have to refer a view object through which view object you could able to hit the database. If that is a requirement, and you don't know what is a view object name at the beginning of the project, you know the view object name in the middle of the application program application logic actually. If that is a requirement, then what we need to do, we have to create the view object dynamically in the middle of your program. If you want to create the view object dynamically in the middle of the program, you have to rely on the country viewer definition implementation. Same thing if you want to create the entity object at the beginning of the program, then you have to rely on the country viewer definition implementation. That is one thing. And the another advantage of these packages is, similarly, we have one more thing for our application module definition implementation. All these three things, packages, three classes are useful to create the definitions of the objects at the runtime. Okay, and another advantage is there with these two implementation classes. So let us say if you wanted to, I was saying before that entity object or view object can pull the data, but that data will be available in the cache memory, right? The cache memory, because after pulling data from database, they will store the data in the cache memory, and from which we could able to pull the data. Example, at some point of time, we think that no, my data programmatically, maybe we wanted to refresh everything and pull everything from the database. That is your requirement. Then you have the provision in these classes where you can refresh the entity object, refresh the view object, and you can again pull the data from beginning. Basically, if you want to refresh it, the view object or view object in the cache memory, you can do that using these things. And there are many other methods which are available in each of these classes. Basically, this is the main use through which we will be doing most of stuff. And its next class in the Vivo is country Vivo implementation. When I say country, it is a country Vivo is the name I have given here. That is the reason it will say that view object implementation class. So what is a view object implementation class? View object implementation class is when the application module, if you remember, in the application module, we have, in the application module, we have a data model. In the data model, every object will have the instance. Sorry, every object will have the instance of that view object, right? When I say the instance, typically what does it do? It will carry the data. Through this instance, you could able to pull data from, you could able to, example, if you want to display the country name on the screen, then you have to refer country vivo1 dot get country name. Then only you could able to see the country name on the application user interface. Okay, you have to refer this instance to pull the data. Okay, now this country viewer implementation, what happens is it represents a whole view object. When I say whole view object, again, view object typically pulls the data from database or entity object, and it will store data in the cache memory. What is the data it means? Data means number of rows, right? A number of rows. Maybe that data may be combination of 1,000 rows. Those 1,000 rows together will be held in this. It will be held in the view object, and if you wanted to do operations on the data set on the 1,000 rows, then country vivo IMPL is the one which can act on those 1,000 rows. Example, let us say we had yesterday we were talking about a transient variable or a static variable. Example, let us say we have employee number, name, salary. These are 3 database columns, and for every row I wanted to store a tax. Example, tax is actually where tax is based on salary. So think of like this. So let us say we have the table. So we have the like this, and we have employee number, name, and salary. So these are actually available in the employees table. Example, I'm saying. If we have an employees table, right? So if we have these 3 columns here. So what happens? The view object, typically view object will be, so we have an employees view example. So employees view will be having the employee number, name, and salary. So we have a requirement that we bring this data into our application. Now our application is calculating the bonus. Example, I'm saying this bonus is not available, or bonus is not available in the database yet, but we wanted to retain this bonus value for every row in my system, in my view object, but which is not actually no column is available here, but still I wanted to maintain it for myself. Okay, I want to maintain it. Okay, so I have it, but these are all the database columns. Typically, these are database columns which actually database columns, and I have some other column. It's not a database column, but I want to maintain something which is actually not residing in the database, but I wanted to maintain programmatically. I wanted to maintain it in my data set, in my cache memory. I have something to do on that. Maybe I will display this bonus on my screen, though it is not available in the database. I want to display it on the screen based on, maybe I will calculate this bonus based on salary into some 0.5. Everyone has maybe something like that. If that is what my logic is, then what I will do, I will have this calculation applied, and I will store it in my transient variable like that. Okay, so if I want to hold the transient variable, or if I want to create a transient variable for all my rows, okay, if I want to do these kind of operations, if I have a class which can hold all these rows, on all these rows I can act by creating a transient variable like that. If that is my criteria, then again you have to rely on this country vivo IMPL, where actually you have that provision of creating transient variable like that, and you also have a provision to create a new record, because you have the handle of all the data sets. On that you can add one more record. So you can, on the whole data set, if you want to do any operation, you have to rely on the country Vivo IMPL class or Vivo IMPL class. And there's one more called row IMPL. If row IMPL is nothing but where you wanted to act on a row. Example, here I have a row and I want to act on a row. I have a whole, only on this row I have to do some action. Example, okay. So example, let us say while on this row, if any updations happens, I need to trigger some logic. On this row, if any updations happens or any insert happen at row level, that row level operations I wanted to handle it. If you think of a row level trigger or statement level trigger is more of like a Vivo IMPL. Row level trigger is more of like country Vivo row IMPL. It's not exactly trigger, but to understanding. So that is how typically it behaves. If we implement a logic at row level class, that logic will be repeated for each and every row. Okay, but in case of this case, if logic is implemented, that one time the logic will be applied for all the rows, because we are typically talking about columns here, we are typically talking about rows here. Okay, we will see that. I will show you the classes and I will see some debug statements. How does it work to help us understand the functionality of it? Only then I will go with the final touch of creating a user interface. Okay. Similarly, in the EVA object, we have something called EVA implementation. Similar to the country Vivo implementation, we have something entity object implementation. It again works on the complete data set. Okay, but entity object, we don't have the row implementation like that. We don't have entity object row implementation, but we have something called collections implementation. So I will talk about collections implementation later point of time. Maybe it will be confusion if I talk about it now. Okay. And in the application module, we spoke about the application module definition implementation. The next one is application module implementation. It is very important class. Basically, it's very frequently used. In our application, if we have 5 view object, right? If I have 5 view object, what happens? All the 5 view object will have 5 instances available in this, application module. In the application module, in the data model, I was telling yesterday, every view object that you created, that view object will have instances available in the data model. Only then data control can able to use that view object to show up the data in the front-end interface, right? So this application model implementation class have references of all those view instances. Okay, so with the help of a view instance, if you wanted to refer a view instance to pull a data, right? And when I talk about database data, it will be resided in the view object. To pull data out of the view object, we should have the view instance. So if we have the view instance, then we could able to work on any data in the application. So application module has the ability to refer all those view objects and pull data on the applications. And also application module has a data control, as I was telling before. Yeah, so application module has a reference to all instance registrations and will have data control, which you do the rollback, commit and rollback transactions. So to do the database level transactions, we have that ability will be available through the application module implementation class, basically. These are the list of classes which are available, and let us see those classes and let us work on the classes by writing simple system println statements to print the data, how it is working, to understand the flow. Once we understand the flow, then we can go one level ahead and show it on the user interface. I know some of you, it may be a little confusing, but once I show it on the screen, maybe it will be easy for you. Okay, so I am in my project. So we have just created the a Vivo, a read-only Vivo. Now what I will do, I want to create updatable view. Basically, for that I need to create a entity object. Okay, so what I will do, I will go ahead and create an entity object, and then I will name this package as Evo, and I will say this one as country update Evo, something like that. So database schema should be country, or I want to make it simplified. Let us say country Evo is better. Okay. Yeah, country Evo, and
Lakshmi, best package is model.eu. That's it.
What is that? Model.eu. I mean, you can create any package here. Basically, we already created our project in the model package. In the model package, I am keeping one more package, Evo. In that Evo package, I am going to store my entity object.
Okay.
That's what my intention is. I can just give it like that. I need to give it. If I don't give it, then under model immediately it will form a entity object here. But I want to have one more folder like this. What we Evo.
Okay.
Okay, I got it. And
no, usually that EOS will be created under the schema.server, right? That's the reason, like naming convention we are going to follow, right?
Exactly. Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So if you use Oracle application framework, we use the schema.server or web UI. Same thing, as I'm not working on the total framework by downloading the whole dump here. As I'm just doing the demonstration, I'm not following the naming notations. Okay, so yeah, and it's always updatable. Okay, so now if you see here, this is asking for generate the Java classes. So here I was saying that entity object will have 3 classes: country, I mean EU definition implementation class, definition class, and we have object implementation class, that is entity object class, and we have collection class, collection implementation class. So this is a collection class. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to enable definition implementation class. See the naming convention, object name, country Evo object name, def IMPL, definition implementation class, and I am making it object implementation class. This object implementation class, as I said, it has access to complete data set. It can get data, get all the column values, set all the column values. It can create a row, it can delete a row, it can do many things actually. So that is the reason it has a create method, remove method, insert and update method, and accessors. Accessors is actually, I didn't cover that accessor part actually, but I'll show you. Accessors is nothing but if we have a row, like this, okay, you have employees Vivo. From employees Vivo object, if you want to get the name, then we have to say employee Vivo dot get name. Get name is a method which actually brings data for that row. Set name means we are setting the data for that row. Similarly, dot get salary means getting that salary, and set salary means setting the salary. Getting and setting nothing but accessors, getters and setters. Yes, I want to get accessors in my class, and I want to generate collections class as well. And extend is nothing but what every class. Okay, so simple fundamentals of the Java. So whenever we have, so Java is actually OOPS based programming language, and we know a Java OOPS based concepts has some components like inheritance. Inheritance means a class can extend another class. A class can extend another class means whatever we are extending, that will become a super class, and whatever is extending the child class will extend parent class, right? So what happens for child class, when extends a parent class, whatever methods or variables available in the parent class, those methods, those variables can be ready-madely used in the child class. That is the fundamentals of inheritance. So what happens here, whenever our classes got created, every class implements a parent class. So if you see, collection implements a parent class. It is a parent class name. This parent class name will have n number of methods. That is the reason we can use those methods ready-madely in our classes. Similarly, row means is nothing but evo impl. evo impl inherits entity impl class. This entity impl class has many methods which can be ready-madely available to use in our country evo impl class. Similarly, we have the entity definition impl class, which is actually available in the oracle.jbo.server. These are actually standard packages. If you just go to the Google and just say that, you can ready-madely see that what is that package is. So this is a package which actually Oracle jbo.server.entity.impl class. It is an entity.impl class. This class implements the middle tier representation of database rows, and it has some variables. These are the variables, and this class has some of the methods. These are the methods available here. Everyone has method. After commit, what needs to be done? If you wanted to, if after committing data into the database, you wanted to write some logic, you have to extend. You have to extend the logic from this method. Okay, we have many things. We're going to see something. If you want to create, example, this method should be classed to supply programmatically default values of an attributes of a new entity object. Then we have to call this method with the respective attribute list. Then automatically those values will be defaulted to that object. So these are the classes are ready-madely available and written by the Oracle. All you need to do is you have to use these methods, and we have n number of methods. We won't be, in reality, everything will come by experience. In reality, we won't be using all these things. Maybe 5%, 10% methods will be used, and our work will be done most of times. Okay, so yeah, every parent class has its own methods. All you need to do, use those methods available in the parent class. Okay, that's it. So I am doing next. Do you want to generate a default view object based on this entity object? Then probably yes, I want it to, because we need view object to pull the data, because only view object has exposure to the data to show up on the front end. Entity object, we cannot use entity object to show up the data on the front end. We have to remember that. Okay, so what package you wanted to keep it? I want to keep it in the Vivo. And what is the name you wanted to give it? So I want to give it. So I think we have created a name called country Vivo. So let us see. Yeah, I will say country Evo view like this. Okay. And yes, I need to add it to application module. Only then application module has the instance of the view object. Only then data control can have access to that and show up on the user interface. So what application module? We have created some application module, test app module. So I will take it and then next. Okay, here I'm not generating any Java classes here. I'm just creating it. So I will generate Java classes for this view object and application module from different screen. Okay, finish. So now Evo package will get created here. Under the Evo, we have this country Evo got created here. Under country Evo, we have some methods, some Java classes will be created. So in this Evo, if you expand it, you have these 3 classes got created. Okay, this XML will be definition. We know this XML will be available for everything, either AM or Vivo, which actually talks about definition. And if you see this, every method, if you these methods got created by simply extending their parent classes. Okay, let me close all this. Okay, so it's my country Evo, and then if I go open the Evo implementation Java, so this is my Evo implementation Java. Basically, it implements entity implementation. That's what we have just seen basically. entity implementation class. This class, the entity object provides representation of data. It caches from a database object such as table or view. Okay, and also database rows represents individual entities in which we can have columns and table. So this is we extended this class. This has become a parent class. It became child class. It means this class can use every method available here that has a provision, because we have extended the entity MPL. So if you want to see what are the methods available in entity MPL, you can browse it, or you can control and click on it. It will open the entity implementation class. So it has a lot of import statements, and it internally extending another row implementation class, and it is also implementing these 3 interfaces. So these are all the variables available in this, and these are all the methods available in this. These are all the methods available in this class. You won't be seeing the definitions of the class. Basically, Oracle didn't expose that. All you can see is the definition of that methods basically. So it has all these methods which are available. If you want to know the description of each method, typically you have to go and look at this documentation. If you click on DML, it will say what this DML method will do. It performs insert, update, delete processing for row. I will talk about this method in a while. So that's what it extended. Now, if you see that this country Evo IMPL, typically what it happened, it has some methods and variables declared internally. So the first variables declared internally is the country ID, country name, and row ID. These are the static variables, and it has a constructor, and it has the getter and setter methods. Get country ID, set country ID. Get country name, set country name, and get the region ID and set region ID. So it is actually setting and getting the column and setting the column. That's the meaning of it. Now we also has one primary key for country ID. So creating the primary key for that country ID, because we created it programmatically, we don't have the primary key in the database table. As we programmatically created it, it is showing up this method. And there is another method for get definition of this entity class. If you wanted to know what this entity object is containing, basically it contains a set of columns and along the definitions. That is the one. Along with that, there are very important methods in this EYMPL are these methods: create, remove, lock, and do DML. So create. So as I was saying that EY implementation class, typically EY implementation class, when creating a row, before creating a row, example, what happens typically ADF framework, when you from front end, when you click on do the create operation to the data control while trying to create a record, then typically it will say to view object saying that, hey, on this method, on this row, sorry, I want to create a new row. Then what view object will say, view object tell to the entity object saying that, hey, we are going to create a new row. Then while the record is, before creating something in the database table, do you want it to do something here? Maybe you want to generate, country ID here. Maybe country ID you want to generate programmatically here. Generate country ID programmatically, something like that. Or maybe generate country ID with some, with some based on some sequence like that. Then typically it is the place, because entity object, before going to the database, entity object is the final reference actually, because entity object has a direct contact with the database to do the updation of the tables. If you want to do anything before insert, it would say it's like a before insert trigger. If you want to write something, then it is the place to write. Similarly, remove means before deleting. Do you want to do something? Then this is the place to do. Okay. And also, do you want it to? You can also lock the record programmatically. If you want to give a lock, before locking, do you want to do some operations? Maybe you before locking, you wanted to make sure no other resource is waiting on this table, something like that. If you wanted to handle those kind of logics, then you can write the logic here. Look for any resources using this table, something like this. You can write logic here. Another thing, and another very important is do DML. If you want to update, insert, delete, if you while you do any update record, insert record, delete record, typically any do DML operation basically basically get the do DML method basically. So basically here, when you do any DML operation, then this method will get triggered. That's what happens basically. Okay, so let us try, and this is one method. Let me cover the remaining methods, and then we will start writing the coding. Okay, right. So next one is definition EMPL. We won't use it much. It's actually, it won't has methods. It is simple method. Basically, we can use this one, but it's actually extending entity definition IMPL. This entity definition IMPL has some methods which we can use to create any entity object programmatically, or you want to refresh. So entity definition IMPL, basically it will have where you can, it has some set of methods typically which you can use, defines metadata of entity object class, basically where you can use to adding entity association, adding link between the two entities, or we have to create the entity definition where you can create the entity object programmatically, create the instance. Basically it's about database specific thing. So where you can use this entity object definition, but most of times we won't use this. So no thing. And the collection I will talk about later. Similarly, we have based on this EVO, we created the VIVO, country EVO view. It's what we have created, right? So this is the VIVO. It doesn't have any methods now, right? It is actually, this is extending this entity object country EVO, and I want to generate Java classes for this view object as well. So how do I do? Go to the Java, and this Java, we have this pencil, just edit it. Here you can generate the classes here. So again, coming back to this, we have the three classes: country viewer definition implementation, viewer implementation, viewer row implementation. So we have the definition implementation, viewer object class implementation, and we have the row implementation. In this object level implementation, we have something called bind variable accessors. So as I said, we can create the bind variables at Vivo object level implementation. So that is where it actually having the bind variable accessors. In the row implementation, we have the row level get the column and setting the column. We have the row level accessors. Okay. So expose accessor to the client, we have to click this. If you want to give direct control of getting and setting the view objects to the data control, basically to show the data in the, to show data in the user interface, typically data control will show the data into the user interface. Typically, how does it work? Data control refer the view instance. Through view instance, it will get and set the data. Okay, but sometimes instead of referring to the view instance, if you want to give a direct access to the data control, maybe data control dot get method or set method, if you want to give that level of access, then typically you have to expose accessors to the client. It means you can expose the setting and getting data directly to the data control. Okay, typically we won't do that. That's not secure way of doing it. So I'm not keeping it. And the next one is service data object class. If we go with a web services, if you wanted to create a web service specific classes, web service specific EVO and VIVO, then we have to choose this service database object basically. Okay, we'll talk about that when we talk about web services. So, okay, I'm creating it, and again it extends these three classes: view object implementation, view definition implementation, and the view row implementation. Again in the Oracle JBO.server thing. Okay, click on OK. So, okay, so every time I was saying that it is extending the parent class. So when extending the parent class, I am saying that parent class has some methods, but we didn't create them. How actually, if you go to the country implementation of Java, I was showing the ADT implementation, and we could able to see the definition of the whole class here, where we are getting it. If you go at the top of this, here actually saying that in this Oracle Common Modules ADF model, they have something called adfm.jar. We have some jar files comes along with the JDeveloper. If you wanted to know which jar files are referring in our project, go to your project properties, click on this icon. In the properties, we have something called libraries and class path. In the libraries, if you so in the library, if you see the yeah, we have something called these are all the libraries which are actually coming along with the Fusion application, along with the JDeveloper. So if we have the access to these libraries, basically, then all these libraries are already available. All these libraries nothing but jar files. As all these jar files are available for us, we could able to these classes are ready-madely available in our these classes are already ready-madely available in our JDeveloper. That is the reason whenever you implement the framework using this proper Fusion-based web application, and if you follow the ADF framework, these classes are ready-madely available in the JDeveloper, and all you need to do is you just need to use it to run your application. Okay, so yeah, it is that. Coming back to when I click on country EVO view, now we have seen 3 Java classes got created here. So we have the definition implementation class, we have the view implementation class, and we have the VIVO row implementation class. If you go with the definition implementation, again, it will have only one constructor probably. So where you can go ahead and create the definition of the view object. Most of times we create view object from while creating the project itself. But if there is a scenario, if you want to create through programmatical way, you have to rely on that. We have the view implementation.java. Here also, it's all talk about the complete view object, which extends the view object implementation class. Basically, here you can use some methods to create the bind variables or remove the bind variables like that. And we have view row implementation. Typically, it's very important view object class where actually you keep getting the data and setting the data in the Fusion application. Again, it will say that this definition most of times similar to the EVO view implementation Java, similar to this most of times. This view row implementation typically where you could have these 3 variables, whatever we have defined as a columns in our view object, and it will have the getter and setter. Get country ID, set country ID, get country name, set country name, get region ID, set region ID. It has these methods available here. So these are the list of, and again, this view object internally refers EVO object. Sorry. If you see here, this is a method called get country EO. Typically what is happening whenever we are trying to contact view object, if the view object is updatable view object, it always talks to country EO object to make sure things are getting done. So that is the reason it always has the get country EO method, which actually returns the country EO implementation. This is nothing but this class, country EO implementation class. Okay, right. So
Let's me whether it is an EVO or VIVO. So 3 Java files, 1 XML file will be created, right? If you want to opt for any Java classes.
yes, 3 Java classes, 1 XML file. There is one more Java classes get created actually in the view object. I will talk about it next session. In general, 3 Java objects, 3 Java classes, and 1 XML file. Okay.
And one more thing, actually, we could see we seen some time back do XML, do DML, right?
Yes.
The do DML. So prior to that, we have some certain classes like void or something. So those are. So can we call those functions or within the do DML?
Okay.
Or not required?
We can call, theoretically we can call, but we have to look at the necessity of it. Yes, we can
I can tell you basically why I asked this question. Basically, because we are doing certain things before creating or before updating or before deleting something, DML operations.
Correct.
So do we need to require to call these things within the do DML or not required, because it is an inbuilt functionality to execute certain classes or certain functions prior to execute do DML. That's what I wanted to understand.
Right. So you want to call another custom method from the do DML because you want to do some kind of operations. That's what your intention too. Absolutely. You can create your own custom method here and we can call that custom method in the do DML. That's possible. You can do that. But before do DML, before doing the data manipulation operation, basically the handler coming to the entity object from application module to view object to entity object. So if you wanted to implement the logic, most of times we have a provision to implement the logic at application module level or view object level, because entity object level is at the end. Most of times we won't, until unless it is really necessary before going to the database, something has to happen that is really important. Only those cases we refer to the entity object methods. Remaining most of the scenarios, we do create the application validation at application module level or view object level. So that is the reason this view row EMPL implementation method and another method from the application module called application module implementation method. These two methods handles most of the programming logic. Okay, so yeah, let me show you that. Let's try creating some.
I think to add that, see what is happening is whenever we want to do any validation at the EVO level, see basically this do DML, create, remove, these are the methods which are by default will be invoked before, like we are inserting something, do DML will be done. When we are updating something, do DML will be called. When you are creating a fresh record, create method will be called. When you are deleting something, delete will be called. So before doing creation, deletion, if you want to apply any validations, that you can write it at the EVO level.
Right.
So usually we are going to write the validations at the VIVO level, AM level. But if you want to implement anything at the EVO level, we can use these methods.
Can use it until unless it's really important. Because
exactly.
as
if you want to implement at the EVO level, we can implement at EVO level.
Yeah.
So usually we are going to do all the validations at the AM level itself. Yeah. But whenever if you want to apply at the entity level, you can use these methods.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly. Entity, you can think of a trigger. If you want to use, if you want to have a trigger at database level, then EVO is the right one to use.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we are not going to be implement any business logic or validations at entity level. We are doing everything.
We can do that, but we can do that, but usually we are going to do it at the AM level itself. See, we are going to write the validations at the AM level, or controller level, or EVO level, or VIVO level. So that is based upon your requirement. See, let us say you are using one EVO. EVO is basically a table. The table you are going to use it in multiple pages. So you want to apply the same validation wherever you are using this EVO. So write it at the EVO level so that it's a code reusability. See, whenever you are using that EVO, that that validation by default will be applicable. No need to write each and every time.
Right.
So that is the EVO level.
Right.
Reusability. That's it.
Like generating the primary key ID before inserting data into that. So I will generate a country ID and set the country ID at before inserting it, so that we won't allow user to enter the country ID in our scenario. Create the country ID in the entity object create method and set the country ID to the set country method using set country method, set the country ID, and then remaining everything will go from the front end basically. You will see that anyways. So, and the application module, we haven't created the Java classes. So let's go here and go to Java and click on this, and we have two classes, application module class and application module definition implementation class. It extends these two parent classes. So out of this application module implementation class is very major thing. I will show you why. Okay, then it is going to has two methods, definition implementation and application module implementation. Okay, so definition implementation, actually if you want to dynamically create the application module definition, it won't use much, better not to use it. And we have the test application module implementation Java. So if you see that our application module has one instance of the view object. If we have, and if you, okay, I think I didn't add this view object yet. Okay, this is my view object. I added it too. So let me save it. Let me come to Java again. I just added the new EVO interface because we have two EVOs in our model, country EVO and country EVO view. But application model, we have only one view attached. So I'm trying to add the another view EVO as well. Okay. Now let me generate the Java classes again. Okay. So let me close it and open again. Okay. So module implementation Java. So we have two methods here. See that? It means when we have a handler to this two view object, it means we have a handler. We have a handler to view objects means we have handler to all the data available in the view object. So if I have access to all the data available in the view objects, it means I can do everything here. Because this application model has access to these default methods, it means this view object has this view object has all the data sets. And as I have access to data sets, I can do whatever I want it to. So that is the, then it means we can easily use this application module programming logic. You can have your own custom code and refer this this VO and this VO and keep writing your logic and push and pull the data as per your need basis. So that is the application module implementation classes. Okay. So what I will do, let us see how does it works. How does it works in sense? We know we can run it. We have application module and now we can run it. If you run it, typically what happens when we run it, typically we have our test window opens up. Once our test window opens up, we are able to do some DML operations there. It means internally all these classes are getting executed. If we know which class is getting executed what point of time, if you are aware of that flow, then it is very easy for you to write any application logic, right? So let me show you that. For that, what I will do, I will write a simple debug statements in some of these classes, and then we will see when the each statement is getting displayed. Okay, so we have the country EVO view. So we know it, right? If we modify it, it means you are updating it. If you are plus means you are creating it, right? If you are committing means you are committing it, right? So you are doing many things here. So what if it means whenever you're doing something, typically in the backend these classes are getting executed, right? So I want to see that, right? So for that, what I will do, I will go ahead and start writing my programming in my classes, because we have all the classes got created, right? So we were talking about the create method, right? So let's go here. So let me close it and open it. Country EO implementation Java. So we are talking about create here. Where it is create. So we are saying that again, every method will have two things here. One is super. Super means it is calling the parent class here. Okay. So if we are create, if example we are create method. So what this create method will do? This create method actually, whenever we create any record, this program will get executed, as simple as such. Whenever this create method is getting executed, it is available in the country IO IMPL class. It is actually calling a super.create. What is super.create? This class is extending another class. This is child class, which is inheriting the parent class. So in this parent class, we have a method called create. And what it is doing, it is simply handing over that whatever we are trying to create, it is simply handing over that one to its parent class. And that parent class will execute the create method. Why? Because this parent class has the real implementation logic. This parent has a real implementation logic, which are actually implementing all the functionality of create. Here, what we need to do, just call the create. That is the reason when we are testing it, everything is working seamlessly without even writing a single code from ours. We didn't write any code, but still everything is getting executed. Why? Because all these methods are written already, and this super.create actually, this super.create actually doing all the stuff. So if you see entity IMPL, and if I go to entity IMPL, and if you see that this entity IMPL has a create method. Is a create method. This method, what it is doing, okay, let me see how many creates are there. Okay, this is a create method. What it is doing, this method should be subclass to supply programmatic default values to variables attributes. Like example, creating a sequence, I was telling you. If you want to create a sequence based on create a primary key sequence, then you can use this create. By default, this entity, it gives some explanation. Typically, this will be used basically whenever you create a new row, basically. So what I will do here in the create, I will write a simple debug statement here. So as we know that this program, this method will get executed whenever I create a row, right? So what I will do, I will write a simple statement. So in typical DBMS output put underscore lines like that. In Java, we have the system.out.println. So that's also print data to the console here. It will print data here. Okay. So for that, you can type like this: system.out.println, and you can type your statements here. So I can write statements like what I will do in create method of country EO IMPL. I will just write like this. Okay. So and the create method of country EO IMPL. That's what it is. So it is println. That's what it is doing. Okay. So what we are going to do, whenever if you are going to create a row there, then automatically this method will get executed. When this method get executed, first it will call the super method, that parent method, and then this statement should get printed. Okay. Similarly, I will write one more statement after removing a row. If you remove a row, then something should get executed. Again, I will write another debug statement here. To write a debug statement, either we can write system.out.println, or we can write SOP control enter. Then it automatically create that statement. So here I will again write in remove method of country EO IMPL. Okay, similarly I will write one more. At do.dml. Okay, because after every insert, update, delete, we get something, right? So I will say do.dml here. Okay, in do.dml method of country IMPL. I did that. Now this do.dml, it will trigger when insert happens, update happens, delete happens, right? So how do we know what is update, what is delete, what is insert? For that, there is something, a parametrical operation, which the front end will give the operations, pass the parameter operation will decide whether it is insert or update or delete. What is operation means? So if you go do.dml, again search here, so it will say that it actually do.dml has three things called DML delete, DML update, DML insert. What is DML delete? DML delete may be a variable. It may be a variable. If you see the beginning, it is a variable actually. Static int DML delete is a variable. If the DML delete variable, so let me open this one, the base class, parent class. It will say that if DML update is number 2, DML delete is number 3, DML insert is number 1. So these are variables having 1, 2, 3, right? So if it is insert, the operation, if it is insert, then this operator will come as, this operation will come as 1. If it is update, operation will come as 2, delete, operation will come as 3, right? So what I will do, I will just write a simple if logic here. If operation is equal to 1, then I would say it is what? Operation 1 means it is insert. So I will write a simple statement. So what I will do, okay, else time is over. So let me keep it just like this and let me test it, and then next class we can go more detail. Okay, so I'm just giving a simple statements like this and just saving it, and I'm going to run the application module now. Okay, so I'm right clicking it. It's opening up. Okay, let's run it. So let's run it and let us see what is going to print here. Okay, so let us open the test window and then test mod in the tester. Let us see the statements, how it is getting printed. We have the create, remove, and DML. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so yeah, we got it. So what is our EVO? It is our VIVO. So what I'm doing, I'm just pulling it. Okay, for pulling the data, so getting the data, we didn't write any logic anywhere. So I am going to create it. Keep observing the window here. Okay, so I'm clicking it here. So it is saying that in create method of country IO EMPL. When I click on create, what happened? It actually call this create method here, and it called create method of country IOMPL, right? So before creating, if you want to write any logic, it is a time where you can set the country ID equal, you can generate a sequence and set the country ID something by default, and you can make it as a read only. Then automatically front end, it will become read only, and that country ID value will be set, right? So okay, let me create something. Let me create some country name as Greece, and region ID as 500. Now what I'm going to do, I am going to save it. Okay, so there's no validation here. So I'm going to commit it. So what is happening here? Again, when you're inserting the data here, it is actually calling the do.dml method, right? So the do.dml method here. So before inserting, after inserting, before inserting or after inserting, you want to do anything before inserting, before super, write something. After inserting means after super.dml, write your operations accordingly. Then what happens? Whatever things you are planning to do, those things will get executed automatically. Maybe sending an alert or sending an email, sending some notifications, all those things can be done. Now let us try removing it. If I say remove it, then two things are happening here. Okay, so let's remove it. When I'm removing it, I didn't commit the data yet. Okay, I'm just clicking the remove here. So I'm not doing any DML operation yet. When the DML operation happens, when I commit it. So when I remove it, automatically this program got executed. That is the reason you got the remove method. Now if you go and commit it, then automatically do DML will get executed, right? So it is a simple way of looking how the logic is executing. If we know this flow, then implementation is very simple as such. All we need to do what exactly the client is expecting, and based on that we have to know where we have to keep our logic. Keeping logic is all about people who don't know Java. It's all about learn Java. It won't take more than a week. It's all we need is core Java. It's not like we need advanced Java kind of stuff, and a little knowledge on the ADF framework. Okay, so what we will do, we'll go learn more on the next class about the more methods, and then we will talk about the front end user interface, and we will see how we can place whatever components we are seeing on the front end user interface, and then we will go to the implementation web services. Okay, so any questions?
Yeah, Lakshmi, it's maybe a basic question. So under model project, we have a .am, .evo, .vivo, right? All these are different components, can we say it as, and all are required?
So you're talking model Evo, model AM, model Vivo, that's what you're saying?
Exactly.
These are actually packages I defined for our readability purpose. So it's not necessary I can give the package like this. You can if you don't give any package name here, everything will come under model. It's all for readability. I was trying to give the package specifications like that. In
But these are 4 different components, can we say it as under a project?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. 3 different components. Yes, because that's part of architecture, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, as part of these are required, right? Now, maybe we have for readability or for our purpose, we have created different names.
Yeah.
But even if you don't give, it will create, right? With the
It will
different.
create. We have to create to start with our work.
Okay, the system will not consider or will not create automatically as soon as we go for an application.
No.
When we go for next like that, it will not create automatically all these 4 components.
Won't create unless we do it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so maybe I'm going a little faster